Hi, we're here for another Crash Course video, and I am sick. So I'm gonna pass it off to Kathy, but first I want to thank you because we got 2 likes and 1 dislike in our last video, which was enough to get enough money to renovate this studio set. So thank you.
The victors in World War II had ideas on how East Asia should be restructured. European powers restored controls over their holdings in Vietnam, Malaya, and Indonesia. The Pacific regions of Asia did not quickly comply with the agreed-upon patterns. The Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaya were independent due to their decolonization attempts. Japan proceeded somewhat according to plan, as the nation began to recover while attempting a different political structure. Occupation by the U.S. provided an opportunity for a new period of selective westernization. The American occupation quickly tore down Japan's wartime political structure. A new constitution tried making the parliament the supreme government body that limited military strength and set the emperor as a symbolic figurehead. But Japan accepted many political and legal concepts while inserting their own values. 2 moderate parties merged in 1955 into the Liberal Democratic Party, which monopolized Japan's government into the 1990s. The leaders of the great Allied powers during the Second World War had agreed that Korea should be independent once again, but the U.S. sponsored a Republic of Korea in the South, which was matched by the Soviet-dominated People's Democratic Republic of Korea in the north. North Korea was a communist state, while the South had parliamentary institutions, but they maintained a strongly authoritarian tone. North Korea attacked South Korea, hoping to impose unification on their own terms. This led to the Korean War. China had sent troops to push back the American troops. The front was stabilized in 1952 near the original north-south border. North Korea produced an unusually isolated version of one-man rule with concentrated power. The Pacific Rim states all stressed group loyalties against excessive individualism or protest and in support of hard work. Confucian morality often was used implicitly or explicitly as part of this effort. Pacific Rim dynamism influenced other regions of Southeast Asia. By the 1980s, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia experienced rapid economic growth. But by the closing year of the 20th century, the region showed weakness in the region as growth lessened, currencies declined, and unemployment rose.
Chun.
By 1945, the balance of power was shifting to Mao, and in the renewed civil war after the defeat of Japan, the communists were victorious in 1949 and established the People's Republic of China. Mao triumphed because communist policies won the support of the peasantry and other groups. The communist long struggle for control had left the party with a strong political and military organization that was rooted in the party cadres and the People's Liberation Army. The army, however, was subordinate to the party. They also used their strengths to reassert Chinese regional prominence. Secessionist movements in Inner Mongolia and Tibet were suppressed, and in the 1950s, China intervened in the Korean War and preserved the division of that country. The close cooperation with the Soviet Union collapsed by the late 1950s because of border disputes and arguments with the post-Stalinist leadership. Government activity for domestic reform was equally vigorous, but less successful. Landlords were disposed and purged, and their lands redistributed. To begin industrialization, a 5-year plan was commenced in 1953, drawing resources from the countryside for its support. Some advances were achieved in heavy industry, but the resulting consequences of centralized state planning and a privileged class of urban technocrats were unacceptable to Mao. He had a deep hostility to elitism and to Lenin's idea of a revolution imposed from above. He clung to his faith in peasants as the force of the revolution. Small-scale industrialization aimed at creating self-reliant peasant communes, but instead resulted in economic disaster. Peasants reacted against collectivization.
The Great Leap Forward, an effort to revitalize the revolution by restoring its mass and rural base, was launched in 1958.
Communist China experienced its worst famine, the crisis exacerbated by a growing population and state rejection of family planning. The government did then introduce birth control programs, and succeeded in slowing population increase.
The South Korean government normally rested in the hands of military strongmen. One general, Shan Ki, held power from 1961 till the military was pressured from power at the end of the 1980s, and was succeeded by an elected conservative government. Limited political activity and press freedom was allowed. From the mid-1950s, primary attention went to economic growth. Huge firms were created by government aid, joined to private entrepreneurship. The Koreans exported a variety of consumer goods plus steel, automobiles, and textiles. The industrial groups such as Hyundai and had great political influence. Speaking of Hyundai, let's go to our mystery object.
Hi there, here we have our mystery object. It's a Hyundai car. That's it. Now it's time for our open letter. Dear Hyundai, a huge industrial group. You have over 500 Hyundai dealerships in the United States. You are also active in other industries, including steel, petrochemicals, heavy machinery, electronics, and financial services. Today, Hyundai, you are among the world's largest and most diversified auto businesses, with 45 affiliated domestic companies and 254 overseas companies in nearly 200 countries. The success of the Hyundai Group mirrors the success of East Asia. It also shows that the economic cooperation within the Pacific Rim has played a significant role in the promoting global development. Hyundai, how do you feel about your company being so successful that it is compared to East Asia as a whole continent? Sincerely, Emilio Orozco. Even though Mao lost his position as head of state, he was still the most powerful leader of the Communist Party. With the power that he still had, he was able to launch the Cultural Revolution, along with many peasants, students, and military. After Mao's death, the leaders opened China to many Western influences. When France became interested in Vietnam, it was noticeable because after the 18th century, the French were involved in politics. When France was determined to make Vietnam a colony that was profitable, they made social and economical problems worse under the Nguyen. In the 1920s, the Vietnamese Nationalist Party, with members drawn from the educated middle class, began to pursue violent revolution. Their efforts ended with the harsh repression of the party in 1929. The fall of the Vietnamese Nationalist Party left the Communist Party of Vietnam, dominated by Nguyen Ai Quoc, as the main focus of resistance. The communists believed in revolt based upon urban workers until in the early 1930s. They shifted to a peasant emphasis to take advantage of rural risings. The Viet Minh had much of the north, but was struggling to have power over the south. In 1954, the Viet Minh had captured all the territory when they took the big fortress in Bien Dinh Pun. After the north and the south were united together, the south was still politically fragmented. The southern government, with the United States backing, was established with Ngo Dinh Diem as president. He rigged elections to legitimize his rule and began a campaign against the communists, as some of you know them, the Viet Cong, in the south. The North Vietnamese regime supported the Viet Cong when hostilities escalated and Diem proved unable to stem communist gains. The United States allowed the military to depose him and take over the war. The fighting continued, but even the intervention of 500,000 American troops and massive bombing did not defeat the communists. Communist efforts to rebuild have floundered, partly because of Vietnamese isolation from the international community. Vietnamese leaders persecuted old enemies. A highly centralized economy prevented growth and continued wartime miseries. Liberalization in the economic sphere finally began during the late 1980s. The United States and Vietnam began movement into a more constructive relationship.
I messed up. It's okay. Dynamism and
Oh!
political structure.
Why?
Boo! I feel so unnatural.
Rejection of family planning
Sorry. Kathy! Sorry!
as president. He rigged elections to legitimize his finally began during the late 1980s. The United States.